Or good morning, everybody. Good morning, Christine. It's great. It's so good to see you guys here. Thank you for being here. Sorry if I seem a little bit exhausted. That's because I am. And when is the best time, like the best time, for your computer to have a complete meltdown? That's right. 3 minutes before you're supposed to go live on your stream, but it is what it is. Why are you surprised? Listen, Beth, I don't know, but I have a lot of faith in you, and I thank you for all your love and your support for everything, and including your support for this this book. I hope that will at some point become a classic, Honking for Freedom. And but thank you for everything. I appreciate it. Oh, Beth, before I really start with everybody, tomorrow I'm going to be, my camera's blocked here a little bit. I'm going to be in the truck tomorrow. I got a couple of interviews today, a couple of really big interviews. And after they're done, just to get away from the chaos, I'm going to hop in the truck in the morning. I'm going to go down to, I don't have a dispatch yet, but likely going to be Connecticut. I looked at the address you gave me where we can meet for me to sign some books for you, and it looks like that's going to work, because they do have a loading dock area for tractor trailers. So the address probably does work. So I'm going to connect with you over Instagram. We'll figure out a time to meet. And it'll probably be in the late morning to early afternoon, between 11 and 12:30. I usually like to try to get the border before 12, but I don't know if I'll be able to tomorrow. So we will do that, and we'll touch base soon. So, and anybody else, by the way, if you know anyone else that's in the Hamilton, Burlington area sort of thing that wants to get a book signed, let's meet up tomorrow for 20 minutes. I'll do whatever I can to sign whatever you need, so you have them for your Christmas gifts. I'm sorry you couldn't do anything more formal, but at least we'll get something done this week. And to everybody else, I want to wish you a very good morning and an amazing morning for all of you. And Matt is here, Megan's here, everybody's starting to slowly roll in. I'm sorry, a little bit late today. And this is the first time I've done a morning stream for quite a while, just because so much was going on last week. My life was consumed with interviews and with getting my truck serviced. So, but today, the first time in forever, I'm not dealing with servicing my truck or being on the road. So I appreciate it. Nisha, thanks for being here as well. You guys are all awesome. I thank you for all your support. Please like, share, subscribe, and please help kind of get the word out for this. I'm going to be today, if you're in the Toronto, Mississauga area, I'm going to be on Mark Petroni's radio show on AM 960, Saga 960. He usually goes to air at 1 o'clock, and we were discussing Sam Bankman-Unfreed, as well as FTX, and much of the nonsense around that, and what we usually go through. Maddie says, I got your book this weekend. Awesome. Did you start to read it? If you did, what are your thoughts? I'm hoping with this book that it does give you a little bit of a hook, and just to give you a little bit of the some people from down south. Just to give you a little bit of insight, you'll notice with the book there's no prologue, there's no introduction. It's table of contents and chapter 1, first paragraph, you're right into the story. That was intentional, and I explained to John that, I kind of want to lay it out similar to how I've always done podcasts. I learned podcasting from a very well-known YouTuber by the name of CGP Grey. Used his kind of philosophy, which was grab people in the first 3 seconds, and that's why it starts later on in the story and then kind of goes back, which is another thing I suggested, that how I wanted to play the timeline a little bit, and I think it's working. I think it's getting some people's attention, and I want to thank everybody for all your amazing comments and support for the book, for those of you who've read it already, and everybody who's just starting to read it now. Please let me know. Give me some feedback. I want to know your personal perspectives. Liz, good morning from Alberta. Good morning, Liz. Thank you for being here. Matt says, it's a great book, as expected. Well, thank you. Left a review on Amazon. Thank you. Oh, yeah, and that is very important. So Etsy is back up. There was, when Etsy, the book disappeared from the Etsy bookstore, and I'm like, uh-oh. What's that about? It actually turned out it was a miscommunication with the API. the programming in the background that connects with the bank, and that was kind of the issue. So Etsy is back up. So whatever platform you buy it on, whether it's Kobo, Amazon, Etsy, and we're just waiting on final approval for Barnes & Noble for it to be active, hopefully today, tomorrow. Just leave a review. If you enjoyed the book, thank you for letting me know. Let everybody else know. And if other people have left reviews that you found helpful on Amazon, please do not hesitate to send them a thank you that this was a helpful review. That helps. It just helps with the analytics and all that sort of stuff. Last night, I've done so many. This whole weekend was just interview after interview after interview after interview. Last night I did. So there's a podcast that I produce. I mentioned this yesterday. Aside from trucking, I've been producing podcasts kind of as a hobby and spinning it into a little bit of a business over time. And I was on a podcast I never thought I would be on. I did fill in one time with one of the other producers when we just needed to get an episode. Nobody was available because they were stuck in court on a very serious trial. But yesterday I was actually interviewed as a guest, and I encourage you all to watch it because Joseph was, as I mentioned yesterday, Joseph goes on mainstream media. He knows a lot of people in mainstream media. He didn't have the exposure to the alternative media narrative like Diana does, because that's where she comes from. And so the two of them interviewed me, and it was really good to sit down with friends, and one friend in particular who maybe didn't understand the significance of the convoy and why it was important, and to communicate that and find that common ground, which we all have to do with our friends on the other side. For those of you who don't know, just a little bit of background on them. So Diana Davidson, who has become a very, very close friend over the years, she came to prominence during the Me Too era. She was she joined a bunch of these, not a bunch of them. She became a men's rights activist from a research angle, and she was combating a lot of the Me Too false accusation cases, and she was exposing a lot of the false accusations. She's really, this is important. It was a really crazy time. So she became quite prolific and quite well known internationally through her YouTube channel and through her research. And she has since become a legal researcher and works specifically on false accusation cases, trying to help with the research end of defending some of these people. So she's really taken her talents, which was first became quite well known internationally, and she's really honed them in and focused and worked with a law firm, which is Joseph's law firm. And she's getting to the point where she's being quoted by judges, and she told me that that's just it's such a rewarding experience. And the reason I say all of that, and plus, listen, Joseph is no slouch. There are good lawyers and there are excellent lawyers. Joseph is definitely an excellent lawyer. The reason this is important is because, we talk about the negativity and, people are worried about biases amongst the justice system and all that sort of stuff. But it's important to know that there's people like that are helping to fight back, that they are helping to push back against the encroachment of some of these philosophies that are antithetical to British common law and our legal system, that they're there on the grounds and they're there being quoted by judges and pleading arguments. And so not only are there people like us who are on alternative media who can be a little, mouthy sometimes, but trying to alert people, there are people within the legal system trying also to help and push back, which is why we're ultimately going to get out of this dark era of neo-progressive, postmodernism, whatever you want to call it. So these are all things to celebrate, to know that there are people are out there. So when they asked me to be a guest on their podcast, I said, okay, sure. Usually when I'm there, I'm behind the camera, but okay, I'll step out in front and talk. And it was really nice. It was really, I encourage you to watch it. I think it'll, I don't know how much additional insight. I guess there would give some additional insight. We were initially trying to go in and discuss kind of the legal backgrounds, what it was like to submit evidence to the commission, what sort of constraints we had in terms of questioning and all that sort of stuff. And maybe we'll do that in a future episode. We did a little bit more kind of a broad scope for people who weren't aware, because I know Joseph's got a lot of friends who are definitely more liberal-minded, and it was, I think, a good vehicle to kind of reach out to those people, which is what's very important. Beth says it was a great episode. Oh, you watched it? Okay, thank you. I I appreciate it. You guys are awesome, honestly. Some of you are just, you're so supportive and so sweet, and I really, really appreciate it. And, especially given what I have gone through with certain people over the past 10 months, it's really appreciative to have all you there and have you, have my back. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. Tao says, I liked your interview with Not on Record. I like that a moral legal frame of view was taken rather than the same old debunking of narratives. Exactly. It might be the video I can finally get my dad to watch. And that's why I keep doing all these different platforms, because I know everybody has something different that they resonate with. And I want to give as much content out there, and I want to go on as diverse a range of platforms as possible, because I know exactly that. There's some people that will support, that will listen to certain platforms. So the next one I'm going to be on is Russell Brand. And I know Russell's audience is quite a broad spectrum of people from around the world. And yet again, we'll discuss some of these things and hopefully what went on, the reality of the convoy and the government and what we deal with. That's in this book. Hopefully the stocking stuff for the year. Hopefully that Russell's audience will be a great vehicle to communicate to people beyond those who are already aware. You don't want to preach to the converted. We got to reach people on the other side. And I think and I hope that Russell, I know he was a very strong supporter of the convoy. That's why I'm so appreciative that he reached out to have me on. But so more on that sometime soon. Joannie, honking. You mean Hong Kong. That's awesome. She's in the business of providing innocence. That's probably the most Herculean profession to be in. You're talking about Diana. She's got some personal reasons for it. I don't want to disclose it here, but she told me specifically why she does it all. And it makes a lot of sense. So she's great. Ryan, morning, brother. It's good to see you. Good job on the Russell Brand. That's great. His reach is huge. I watch him fairly regularly as well when I have time, and I quite like him. And it's actually funny. Me and Jordan Peterson were talking about Russell during the convoy. I don't know. Maybe I'll explain that in Russell's interview if it comes up. But I'm pretty sure it'll be all right. So we'll see what happens. That's I got to do my test in less than an hour. I got to get on with Russell's team just to do the audio test and all that stuff. Okay, so yesterday I talked about narrative poisoning, which I don't know if the terminology has been coined by Scott Adams or somebody else, but the idea is not all that new, but it's a great way of communicating this. And this is what I've gone through for the past several months, which is, I explained yesterday, the idea that, the first narrative becomes the truth and the story, and we live in this world where we're not shown a multitude of perspectives on an issue. So the first narrative, whether it's true or not, becomes the narrative or the truth. And so what I've been dealing with is how to combat narrative poisoning, which I've had to do that in the past, countering narrative poisoning on other issues in the past. And just so if this ever happens to you, anybody who works in a corporation or works in a large company, you've probably had to deal with this in the past as well. People, whisper campaigns about you and that sort of stuff, right? Those were kind of the tactics that were used against me since the convoy. And it was repetition and repetition, just like Goebbels said. And then they've convinced people of a narrative. And I guess... I remember when I saw somebody sent me the clip of Sheila Gunn Reid when, after my testimony, she's like, oh, how do you say? She wasn't very complimentary of me because I don't know if she understood the complexity of the body of evidence that I was providing in addition to my testimony. And she said, oh, we'll have Benjamin on anytime he wants. He can come in and clarify the record, and we won't edit it in full context. And that's when I called my lawyer, Jim Kalaharios, who most of you I'm sure know, and said, Jim, if you have her contact information, just contact her and say, sure, we'll come on. And there's no question off limit. I don't have any limitations on questions. People can ask me whatever they want. And we did that episode. And I was very disappointed that they didn't put it on the main Rebel News channel. And they didn't include it in her weekly, like we were recording for her weekly show. And she didn't upload it as their weekly show. So it was very disappointing. It's kind of like what the CBC does. They'll cover a story. And they'll say, yeah, okay, they'll put it on like the bottom of the newspaper in the corner or the bottom of their feeds. And just so they can say, oh, yeah, we covered it. But you're going out of your way to ensure nobody sees it. So whatever, it is what it is. I don't know why. Maybe too much investment in this sort of narrative. But it doesn't really matter because this is why. Combating narrative, these false narratives, the first thing that it requires is just time, right? When the truth is inexpensive, I guess is the best way to describe it. That's how I look at it. And people or organizations or institutions or whatever it is that promulgate a fake narrative, you see this around all the cerveza sickness information and data and medicine. They have to invest so much time and resources to over and over again repeat to the masses, don't believe your lying eyes. This is the truth. What we're telling you, this is the truth. But the beautiful thing about the actual truth is it doesn't require that. It doesn't require that heavy investment because the truth always eventually comes through, right? Because that's just easy. So if you're ever encountering this, then people who spin narratives against you, whatever, just give it some time. You got to figure out a way to buy time. And over time, the people who yell and attack you and all that sort of stuff, like in my case, they run out of steam. They get bored, right? They'll do it for a little while, and then they'll get it out of their system. And then eventually, all the people around them who aren't emotionally invested in either argument will then over time discover the truth. And there was an excellent article. I don't know when it was put out. I think it might be a week or so old. I'm not sure. It was written by Wyatt Claypool from the National Telegraph, who we are broadcasting to right now. And the name of the article is the National Telegraph. On the National Telegraph, it's called "The Freedom Convoy Lawyers' Antics, Incompetence, or Sabotage." And I had never read this article, just I've been so busy with other stuff. And it's pretty good how everything was laid out. Now, I know Diverge Media, Greg Stanley at Diverge Media, has also been doing deep dives into what happened at the commission from our perspective, and he's continuing some ongoing investigations on some stuff. But in the article, what stuck out to me, and this is just from a personal reason, but I'm going to quote this from the article. That's why I have notes here and wrote this down, which is, quote, "It is important to note that 4 of the 7 original directors of Freedom Corp are no longer on the board of directors, many of whom, Chad Eros and Chris Guerra specifically, claim they were forced out by lawyers representing the JCCF, who now claim to represent Freedom Convoy, or Freedom Corp. The JCCF has received all donations, and funding for the trucker protest since the almost $6 million in donations has been locked in escrow due to an injunction brought on by Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau." And I just thought the only thing that I would note is I think it's 5 of the original 7 directors are no longer on. I'd have to check. I think Miranda's still on. I'm not sure. But I think that's 5 of us are no longer, because I know Tamara is no longer on the board. Chris Barber is no longer on the board. I'm not on the board. Chad Eros is not on the board. I think it's just Miranda and Sean, the original 7 who were there during the convoy. All these changes were done after, by the way. So the board remained what it was until after the convoy. I think at the end of February is when they started making all of these changes. And so, yeah, a bunch of shenanigans going on. And then I saw this this comment that was in response to this article. And again, there's certain tactics you use for combating narrative poisoning. And every situation is different, right? So in this situation, there are people in media who decided they're going to do a deep dive because they're just not going to trust things at face value. And they went through, and that's how this article came about. That's how the few articles on Diverge Media came about. That's even how the interview with myself, Jim Kalharios, and what's it called? And Sheila Gunn-Reid came about, right? So this was a response to the article. This is what really got my attention, which was this. It was, whoa, quote, "What an article, an eye-opening piece of true journalism," 100%. "I had forgotten what it's like to read such material." Right, because we haven't had investigative journalism in any of the fake news organizations for a number of years now, right? This is where you're finding real journalism on platforms like the National Telegraph and on Diverge Media. Luke, how do you pronounce his last name? I always pronounce Luke's name wrong. He's the one who is Rudanowski, something like that. He's the one who exposed Epstein's Island. He was the host of the panel I was on at Bitcoin Miami. A really nice guy. Anyways, so refreshing and welcome. I also had observed many moments of the inquiry with hands in WTF positioning. How and why critical opportunities that would have revealed certain truths were theoretically squandered. At times, I sincerely felt I was watching a rigged sporting event. They were deliberately, quote, throwing the game while still feebly attempting to present otherwise to all in attendance. And I ashamedly never recognized the JCCF legal team inserted themselves uninvited. A well-presented argument, an eye-opener. And I think that's, part of this golden era I talk about and how things are going to get better. And we all have so much to be positive for because things are going to get better. This is one of the things because people have a thirst for real journalism and real investigative journalism. And people have a thirst for the facts. I think people are just burned out by narrative. And they just want to see truth at this point. And they're going to want as much detail as possible, and you're starting to see this. So I was very, very happy. That was a very nice comment, if I ever put that. And so Diverge Media as well. Greg Stanley works really hard, independent journalist, and he's one of those guys. He's like Jim Karahalios. Jim is really focused in on attention to detail, and Greg Stanley is the same way as an investigative journalist. And that's what you need. That's how you break through any sort of narrative, right? So these are tactics that, in my particular case, that were effective in combating narrative poisoning, in that there were journalists out there who wanted not to take things at face value. So I made myself available to those resources. And in fact, they didn't really need me very much at all. They were just kind of already doing it on their own. So Christine, you got to run. Go. Have a nice day. I love you, dear. I'll see you soon. Okay. And I think this revival of real journalism is going to be part of this golden era. So when you look at stuff, then kind of look for that old school investigative journalism. Just seek it out. And if you're just getting narrative, you're only just getting one side of the story, then there's a problem. And that's what you see with a lot of We talk about independent media, whether it's right-wing or left-wing media. You're only getting one side of the story. If you're only getting one side of the story, you're not informed, which is why I try to, as much as I don't like certain left-wing media, I do, I dismiss it often and say, I don't pay attention to it. I don't really read it. I don't, but I'll look at their Twitter posts. I'll look at their feeds. Sometimes once in a while, I'll click on an article just to get a sense, confirmation of what I believe the other side would be saying, and usually I'm 99% right, because identity politics makes people extremely predictable, right? But all of this is a reason to stay positive, and if you're going through this sort of event in your own lives ever, staying positive is really the first thing you got to do. You just focus on that and focus on a long-term horizon. The people who are attacking you, whether it's at your work or in your professional life or your personal life, that's usually short-term. Let them blow off their steam. And over time, people will understand that there's something more to the story. So that's a short version. In terms of specific tactics, I could write a book on that, to be entirely honest. Good morning, Jesse. How you doing? Jesse was in the live chat yesterday in Not On Record with me. Thank you for being there. It was awesome. Randy, good morning from BC. Where in BC are you? It's a big place. Are you from northern BC, southern BC? I'm not sure. Let me know. Could you share a link to the article on the Convoy lawyers? I can't find it in the search on their site. I actually put it in, if you're on YouTube, I put the link in the description, or if you're on Locals, Guillaume just posted a link to the article in the live chat on Locals. So one of those two places you'll be able to find it. Good morning from Colborne. I think I was driving through Colborne last week. Good morning, Trish. It's good to talk to you. Okay, so the other endeavor I'm on is trying to find all the positive way ahead of me. Okay, no worries. Thanks, Tao. The other thing that I talked a little bit about last week, which was artificial intelligence. And, I started off being very concerned about machine learning and artificial intelligence. I've had a computer since I was 3. I understand the basis of coding. I'm not a computer programmer by any means. I learned at a very young age my syntax is nothing that's going to allow me to build a career in programming around. But I do have this, I did have this concern over artificial intelligence, and I did a whole long episode on it. And I think Christine is now actually using one of the AIs, which is the AI that helps kind of with your emotional state. There's one that's designed specifically to help people through depression, and which probably was very useful during COVID while everybody was locked in their homes. I've used it quite a bit, and it's quite good just to test it, see how you could trip it up and all that sort of stuff. And then Jordan gave a speech at Canada Christian College last week that I was at, and he talked about ChatGPT, which is run by OpenAI, and was something on my list of things to go through in detail. Machiavelli's Underbelly, the Twitter account, has been using ChatGPT for quite some time. Excellent Twitter follow if you're on Twitter. So I asked ChatGPT what I think is an important question related to what we just talked about with media and narratives. And I said, can AI, this is me asking the artificial intelligence, I said, can AI help humans find bias in media articles? Because it's something I think a lot of us struggle with when even I do from time to time. You're reading an article and you're just kind of like, there's so many weasel words being used in the article. You're not sure where the person is coming from. And so this was the response from the AI. And notice how it writes. This is an AI talking to me. This is exactly what it said. Yes, it's possible for artificial intelligence, parentheses AI, the grammar of these things are amazing, to help humans identify bias in media articles. AI can be trained to analyze text and identify patterns and characteristics that may indicate bias, such as the use of certain words or phrases that are commonly associated with bias, right? You see that in all the Trump articles, during that year, or they would use the words dangerous or controversial as a descriptor. But anyways, for example, this is the AI again. For example, it's just amazing that this is a computer talking. This is not even computer. This is software speaking. For example, AI systems could be trained to identify subjective language, which is often used to express opinions or feelings and may indicate bias. AI systems could also be trained to analyze the source of the article and consider factors such as the publication's history or the background and motivations of the author, which can help identify potential bias. That happens a lot. They'll click on an article that's written by a journalist, whatever it is, from another country. You see this a lot with American journalists during the Convoy. They'll click on, a journalist from Canada. They won't know that journalist is, on either end of the political perspective. And if you don't know where the journalist is coming from, then it becomes more tricky to kind of figure out their bias. Anyways, finishing on last paragraph. This is the AI talking again. It is important to note, however, that AI systems can only identify patterns and characteristics that they have been trained to recognize. Therefore, it is still important for humans to approach media articles with a critical eye and consider a wide range of factors when evaluating their credibility and potential biases. So, there you go. This was something I mentioned a couple of days ago, that I think one of the big advantages of AI is it will help, so many of us, professional people that I know in this field, telling me they're not sure what they can believe anymore when they're reading, legacy news, fake news articles. Well, I think we may have a solution in that. In artificial intelligence, we may have our own, artificial personal assistant that will help us with it. I think the way this is going to evolve, I'm trying to look at the landscape. First is the AIs, there's going to be thousands of them, different ones, almost like apps on your phone. And they'll all come at different price points, right? There'll be a subscription service. And I think people will be willing to pay the $10 to $20 a month to have an AI assistant, right? So imagine Siri, but Siri has the capabilities of a human interaction. Right now, Siri is probably the weakest of all the AIs because I guess technically it is, but it isn't. But the point is, we'll be able to have an app on our phone that's our preferred AI that will be able to do analysis of these articles. So if we go to read an article on, not to pick on Rebel News, it's just on the top of my head, but an article on Rebel News and say, okay, AI, can you read this article and show me the bias, right? So you read the article and say, what do you think? And they'll ask you, well, did you notice that the person omitted the following facts in their argument? It's like, oh yeah, good point. So I'm quite positive on it, on AI. I think as long as, if in a positive way forward, there'll be thousands of AIs. The free market will weed out the problematic AIs. We'll all be able to choose which one we want. And the government should be limited in its capacity to use artificial intelligence. Now, we know people in government are morons, so they're going to try to do the opposite. They're going to try to restrict AI for the general public and only have AI accessible to government and government institutions. So that's what we're going to need to lobby against. But knowing that, and knowing this technology and the rate that it's going to increase, the government's always so far behind on things. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that for several years. So I just hope, I'm trying to I know a lot of people, especially in the conservative space, that are really concerned about this, and we don't necessarily adapt well to new technology. We're a lot more skeptical. We need to see things be proven over longer periods of time. That's just kind of the nature of how conservative-minded people are. It's we're not the same sort of risk takers. I'm somewhere in between the two, right? I'm maybe much more of a risk taker than most conservatives. But I think there's a lot of angst, and a lot of people are really that have some level of anxiety around AI. And as somebody who's kind of grown up around tech and computers and understands this on a base level, I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as we thought it is. At least it's not going to be nearly as bad as I thought it was. I think it's going to be amazing, and I don't think Skynet is around the corner. So we can all relax a little bit. Okay. Occupation used for Windsor. Okay, hold on. Let me just go back to your comments here because I'm a little behind. Windsor, Ontario in the house. Good morning. Good morning, David. Thank you for being here, brother. Were you anywhere near the protest in Windsor during the trucking convoy? I'm just interested. If you are, let me know. Occupation used for protest. I don't understand that. I don't know what that means. Does bias trigger phrases include, let me be clear? Yes. Or the number one thing, and you hear this often. I'm going to say this, and you'll know it's at 100%. When you see a debate with people, and they say, so what you're saying is, right? Whenever you see that phrase, somebody's constructing a straw man and is doing the opposite of a steel. When you steel man somebody's argument, you kind of want to convey their argument that you understand in full. But so you say is, okay, I'm going to tear apart your argument and say you're saying the opposite of what you're saying. Happens all the time. Opinion pieces are the worst, the people that buy into them as fact. Yeah, and I mentioned this in a previous stream. I had this conversation with Peter Kent when he was an MP, but I was more interested in his background in media. And I asked him when he thought media became problematic. And he said I think he said the 80s, in the late 80s, early 90s. He said when newspapers started putting opinion pieces on the front cover or on the front page of the newspaper, he realized, okay, this is not going to end well. This is going to be problematic, and that's when things really started. So it is what it is. There may not be much difference in AI. That is a big assumption. Hopefully, yes, but there are many factors such as the compliancy of antitrust oversight preventing buying up competition. Listen, life is complicated. I don't disagree. And, Tao, by the way, you really do post some amazing comments to my Rumble channel. I do appreciate it. And Rumble and YouTube, they're always very thoughtful, much like Guillaume. Guillaume, who I can't thank enough. I think he was the first person to buy 5 copies of Honking for Freedom. And what I really appreciate what he did is he bought a couple of copies as gifts, I guess for Christmas, but he bought a couple of copies for his local bookstore, which there was a certain political bias that might be against this particular event. But I think that was a very, very wise strategy. And if they're not going to burn the book, maybe they'll read it, and then maybe they'll open their minds a little bit to this beautiful moment that we had together. So, yes, Trisha, 100%. So when using the word occupation to condition the masses that it was a bad thing, that is 100% deceptive persuasion. And you heard that by the Crown that was prosecuting Tamara. She kept saying occupation over and over again. Occupation, occupation. And you know who else described that? You know who else used that word? Keith Wilson. Our lawyer used that word. Occupation. So, everything that I've been saying. Maybe he was confused. I don't know. But just if that was like how sloppy somebody could be. Remember, he said, what was this called? Diverge Media did a 2-minute long video of Keith Wilson's testimony that everybody should watch. That's really, really concerning, some of the language that he used. But anyways. And also, I think Chris Barber used the word occupation, but, he's under the thumb of the JCCF, and they're, from what I was told, threatening them if they don't do what they say, then they're going to pull their free legal advice. Well, free legal advice is worth exactly what you paid for. If I never hear, let me be clear again. In my life, it'll be too soon. The Trudeau government has made that a terrifying phrase. Yeah, well, listen. I don't really put much stock into them. I think they're a lame duck administration at this point, and it's only a matter of time till they're out of office. Heads up with using GTP or GBT to write blog posts. Google stated they will downrank and penalize websites posts made with GBT is what it is. Yeah, and I think that's because that will make Google obsolete. That's why. That's just. I think Google has hit its peak in terms of its power and influence, and I think the next wave will be artificial intelligence, and maybe it's in the form of OpenAI or something similar, but that'll just replace Google. And I'm not surprised that they're going to downrank anything with ChatGPT because that's the competition, right? So, and it's lightning years ahead of Google. Language is powerful and can be purposefully misused. It also can be used to persuade. And that's why, when I post certain things with certain words, especially on my feeds, sometimes my grammar is a little bit choppy. That's intentional because there's certain words I want to use. And to get it in such a small frame and have all the kind of influential words I want to fit it in such a small, in such a short blog post or micro blog post, it's going to be a little bit choppy. But for me, it's more important to use the words that I want to use than have somebody, the grammar is completely, it's a little choppy. Yeah, I know it reads choppy, but it's important. Tao, yeah, I like Rumble better. In live chat here, there are so many limited characters, so many thoughts might not come across in the way. So you know what I'll do, Tao? With Rumble to live stream to it, you can't set a permanent RMTP setting. You have to set the RMTP setting every time you broadcast. So I'm going to try, because I do pay for Rumble services, I'm going to try to set, maybe the next time I stream, I'll try to set the RMTP setting to Rumble the day before. So when I live stream the next time, I will stream it to, hopefully, if it all works, to the Rumble account as well. So let's give it a shot together, and I appreciate you being here. All right, I got to run. Why don't you file a bar complaint against Wilson? It seems you might have a legitimate grounds. Oh, I have way more than just legitimate grounds. Lots of things are being considered. The other thing is, whenever you do something like that or you sue somebody, the problem with suing people for defamation is you're then married to them. And it's kind of like, do you really want them in your life, or do you just want to move on beyond them and just make them be irrelevant? So I don't know. I'm playing with both sides. I have people pulling me in both directions. I haven't decided what to do. There are certain things I got to do first that are primary, but it's funny. It's interesting that you mentioned that this week. It really is. Text drives me absolutely nuts. All right, okay, you guys are all talking. Risa, I also prefer Rumble. Miss you on Twitter Spaces too. Okay, so Risa, by the way, because I've been nuts with all of these interviews and this weekend, and I got to start my setup soon for Russell in a couple minutes. I will be doing, I think, a Twitter Space in the next couple of days. So I will let you know. I'll send you the link, and you'll get it. And come join the space, and let's talk there. Anytime I heard the word occupation or occupier, it's an indigenous person using it now. The liberals adopted it. Yeah, I mean, I think there's much more to it, but anyways. Okay, I got to run. I know it's late. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you guys off, but I love you all. I got to get to my interviews and stuff. I'm going to try to do a stream tomorrow before I get off in the truck. I'm not sure if I'll be able to, because I got to meet with Beth to sign some books for her, and anybody else who's in the Burlington or Hamilton area, send me a note if you want to get some books signed tomorrow. While I'm on the road, I'll stop by. We'll have coffee for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, do some signing, hang out, and then I got to continue going to the U.S. So I love you all. Thank you all for being here. Jesse, thank you again for participating last night in the live stream. Risa, I miss you too. I'll be in a space very shortly. We'll talk. And I hope you all have an amazing day. Stay positive. There's so many good things that are happening in the world. Just make sure to inform everybody else that things are just going to get better. All right? All right, I got to run.